Blazer Smith is a generosity catalyst, entrepreneur, advisor, and investor committed to advancing generosity and impact. As vice president at the National Christian Foundation, he helps families and advisors maximize tax efficient giving and explore impact investing. He co founded Pentagon Safety Equipment and has advised ventures in real estate and tech. A former Senate aide, Blazer holds a BA from American University. He lives in Lexington, Kentucky with his wife, Antia, and their children. A follower of Jesus, he's passionate about faith, family, reading, travel, and community. Blazer, it is great to have you with us here in the studio today. How are you?
I'm doing well. Appreciate it here. Yeah, very, very
Yeah,
good. So,
that's good to hear. It's good to
Glad
hear.
you're here.
yeah,
So I'm going
nice,
to
nice.
kick off the icebreakers. And
Go
my
for it.
first question, and I love this one. If you could choose between these two powers, the first is teleportation, but only to places you've already been, or flight, but only 3 feet off the ground.
That's great.
I would pick teleportation to only places that I've been because I've been to some pretty cool places.
No
So,
doubt.
but I mean, flying 3 feet above the ground is pretty cool, but I'd have to pick teleportation to a place I've already been.
That's fair.
So,
I'd
yeah,
probably choose
yeah,
that too.
yeah. I mean, I feel like I don't know. I often think about pretty often. There's a sandwich shop. It's a Russian sandwich shop in Vienna, and probably about every like 5 weeks, I'm like, man, it'd just be great to have one of those tiny sandwiches. So like
Yeah.
that perfect use of teleportation right there.
So all you need is zip over to the Vienna sandwich shop.
Yeah, just boom. Like I can't really justify. Just I don't know flying. Even if I had enough money where I had to fly a private jet, I don't
Yeah,
think I would travel. But teleporting, different story.
that would work. That's fair. I like that. I like that. All right. In a world where all condiments have been outlawed, which one are you going to try to smuggle?
That's a really good question. Uh, I would say truffle salt. I feel like truffle
Oh,
salt is a
okay. Going
condiment.
straight to truffle shot.
Truffle
That's
salt.
a good one.
It's that has been the most life changing condiment in my lifetime. So I had a friend that told me about it. I was like $35 for a small thing of salt. That's ridiculous. And then I started using it, and I use it on all sorts of things. And it's just,
That's
I mean, it's
great.
bougie, but it's
Yeah,
been a game
sure.
changer. Just those little things. So that
What do you
I
what do you
definitely say
use?
truffle salt.
What do you use
I use
truffle salt on the most? Do you think? Like, what's
Fries.
your?
Oh.
Just,
I actually surprisingly use it on eggs. I mean, fries,
okay.
yes, but I think
Yeah.
eggs. I have eggs on a regular basis, and then I don't know. I think just especially just as finishing for different things. It's just like
Sure.
it's got the little bit of that savory
Yeah.
punch to
Some
it. So
umami and yeah.
yeah, exactly.
Nice. Nice.
See,
It's
good
great.
quality. This is great, Aaron. You got a good quality guest, good palate. Love it. I'm already in, man. I'm already in.
We're very selective about the guest palettes that we bring on the show.
I can tell. It's awesome.
Very discriminating tastes. Yes.
Very discriminating. It's great.
So, if you had to revive one outdated piece of tech, I'm thinking flip phones, dial-up internet, fax machines, 8 tracks, whatever. What would you bring back?
Ooh, uh, I don't know. It's probably bad. Just the first thing that popped in my head was melodica. It's not really an out of date tech, but I just feel like
Okay.
that's kind of I don't know. Melodica is more of it's an instrument, but I would say from a technology standpoint, I feel like I feel like eight tracks are pretty cool. I think that's kind of just a funky. It's just a funky thing. I don't know, but
Yeah.
actually maybe even segways. I don't know. I'm kind of bouncing all over. I feel like
Oh,
segways are
okay. Okay.
because segways are there, but no one really thinks about it. Whenever I see them, I feel like I transported back in time when I see a segway.
What
So
exactly happened there? Was that just like born in the wrong era? Because I always felt it. Like even now, I'm thinking back, and I feel there was an awful lot of potential there. I would use a segue. What fell through that we couldn't ever quite adopt those on the broader scale?
correct me if I'm wrong, but I've thought that the founder ended up falling off a cliff on his invention. So I feel
Oh,
like
really?
from a PR standpoint,
Oh, snap.
so
Could not possibly.
it's kind of like, business marketing gone bad. Anyway, I just feel like if you have a very intense face, you got an intense face, and you're looking very, very fiercely on a segue. I just feel like it's a conversation starter. I don't know. I think it's the start of many different things.
That's so great. Wow, I love that. Okay, I'll look that up after we get off here because I'm
definitely.
genuinely curious now.
Yeah, I don't know.
That's-
I'm just saying. I
so funny.
remember reading something strange about the founder and about the invention. So anyway,
Wow.
there you go.
The headline's like he died as he lived. That's probably bad taste. All right, I'm sorry. I should move into some more serious topics.
Sure.
Okay, so all right, I want to Blazer. Earl, like I think the first line of your bio I read there, you call yourself a generosity catalyst. So first of all,
Correct.
tell me what that means in practice, right? And
Sure.
the National Christian Foundation, how do they unlock giving that might not happen otherwise? Because you probably know a lot of generous people, and
Sure.
I've grown up around generous people. So what are you doing specifically with them that might present new opportunities people aren't used to seeing?
Yeah, so I think my role and how I define myself as in terms of a work standpoint of a generosity catalyst is, I think that many people, in the context of generosity, it's relative, right? It's like there's some things that we're generous about, and there's other things that we aren't. But I'm a firm believer that when you look at someone's values and their calling, anything that is part of who we are, we're naturally generous. But one of the things that I often do is I like to consider myself like the tip of the spear. So when you look at purpose, passion, calling, all these different things, I think lots of people love to talk around them, but it's very hard to be very specific and targeted. And so the core for me, though, is the three most important things in life are God, relationships, and money. We often talk about those the least, but most everything goes back to those three topics. And so what I feel like my kind of passion is being able to kind of start the conversation, the question. So what I do at NCF, or the National Christian Foundation, is I help people gift appreciated assets. So anything can be gifted, but most people don't realize the power of that. And so I have a friend that says, friends don't live, friends give cash. And when you think about it, we're all going to die, and eventually someone else is going to have those resources. But the thing that's fascinating from a business standpoint is a lot of things are kind of converging. So marketing, and impact investing, as well as kind of philanthropy. There's all these different things where it's like, hey, I'm starting a business for this reason, and I want to have this impact. Well, is it a marketing play? Is that, an expense play? Like how are you structuring that? But what I help people do is I help businesses think about the why and work their way back. And sometimes it's an investment, sometimes it's a charitable thing, but mostly what I'm focused on in the context is the conversation. How do you grow in greater alignment? And I do that through building generous communities and like-minded folks surrounding vocation and surrounding passion. And then number two is facilitating asset appreciate gifts. So most people don't realize that if you can gift a portion of real estate or a business, and it can be incredibly meaningful. Because, like, great example of stock, you gifted a stock, it's $1,000, but let's say you paid $100 for it. You're not having to pay tax on that difference, and it can be pretty meaningful. But especially you got a $10 million business, et cetera. So anyway, hope that answers the question.
Yeah.
So you mentioned generous communities. What does building a generous community look like specifically here in Kentucky? I mean, what are the, being from all over the country, grew up in Southern California.
Sure.
Kentucky's the friendliest place I've been in the country. And so what are the unique opportunities or challenges that exist here with building a generous community, especially here?
Yeah. I think that there's kind of two things that are often needed for a generous community. I think one is a catalyst, and I think one is a convener. Sometimes they're one of the same, and I can kind of navigate that. But I think what I notice is, like, community, I think, is the new buzzword in the 22nd century or whatever, in the
Hmm.
context of when you look at the value of AI, one of the challenges is, can I trust the data that I'm getting? Where is trust in this new reality? The way that I've been able to kind of structure that is, I think, stacking, similarities among different people. If I know, hey, someone has a faith alignment and I know that one person's an attorney, well, if I get a group of attorneys together that have a faith alignment, that's kind of unusual. But then on top of that, if they're passionate about a particular area, then that can create really powerful and intimate conversations, relationships, because then people are finding out, how do I do a deal? How do I give more? How do I be with this person, instead of, hey, I'm going to a trade show and this is a transaction? But I think it starts with the who. And I think the biggest lesson I've learned in business is it's really about the who, not the what. I think the what is important, but when you look at it in capital creation, where things flow, it often comes out of the who. And so how I often structure it is, who do I know that's passionate about this thing? Who can add value with whatever that thing is? And then do I think they have a similar personality or they have a similar passion? And then curating those small kind of gatherings. And then I think those naturally kind of create a ripple effect, but it's nuanced to kind of figure out, hey, are these people connecting? Do they have some commonality? And then the magic is when you add some other people that may fall in that line, and that kind of creates an innovation. But it's hard to navigate, where I think a lot of people run into, hey, these are great people, great ideas, but they may not mix because they're too different. And so I think it's starting with the
Hmm.
similarities and the intimacy first, and then kind of building it. So one of the great examples is redemptive real estate. So there was a guy, I had a conversation with a few different developers, and they were faith aligned, and they were trying to figure out ways to kind of really maximize their impact locally. And one of the things they kind of noticed is there was an event in Dallas, Texas. I heard about it and I invited a few friends and said, hey, is this something that you'd be interested in? He said, yeah. So I invited 3 people, 11 went, and 8 of them had just changed their life. And so the remaining folks said, hey, let's start meeting together. Let's start kind of gathering, thinking through how we can solve specific issues in the city of Lexington. And then got a gathering together. Thought there'd be 20 people. There's 43 people. Now it's like there's about 220 people
Hmm.
addressing foster care and addressing affordable housing. And there's
Wow.
all sorts of different groups, but it's like they were faith aligned. They were investors or owner operators. They had a passion for their city, and they were really actively engaged in those 3 things. And so now it's kind of got its own life. And that's just one of many different things that I get the opportunity of doing.
Huh. That's cool. Can you, you co-founded and you're scaling the Pentagon safety equipment. Can you give a little bit of background on that, kind of what you were doing there? And are there any, I guess, things that were born from that kind of gave you a
Sure.
special ability to solve problems and drive impact in what you're doing now? Were there any catalyst,
Yeah.
as you were growing that and with what you're
Yeah. I
doing?
didn't realize this at the time, but I think the 3 core things of my life and kind of part of my calling and passion are creating safe places that inspire beauty and freedom. And I think when I looked at, I was working in the Senate Judiciary Committee, and
Hmm.
I was reading a research report, and I came across a multi-billion-dollar industry called donning and doffing. It's just how people put on gloves, and I'm like, there's a multi-billion-dollar industry to teach people how to put on a glove. A, I think it's a
Uh-oh.
problem, but B, how big is the actual market? Right? It's like, what is going on here? So then, long story short, I'm not gonna. There's a whole lot of backstory, but my business partner is a little bit older than me, taking the company public. He'd scaled, and he was about streamlining the supply chain, and from Asian manufacturers selling the states, vice versa. How do you get products as quickly and efficiently to the market as possible? And he was consulting for a few companies about these types of products, so gloves, safety glasses, N95 respirators, things like that, called PPE, personal protective equipment.
Mm.
And I was looking at this
Hmm.
research report, and I'm like, man, this is kind of crazy. And then I realized I don't know anything about business. I want to be mentored. And we just kind of hit it off. And then there's a whole long story, but ended up starting that company, grew it to several million in sales, and then had a bunch of near death experiences, and And then COVID happened and we grew 6x, and very surreal. But the theme though of it started for me with the Who, like I had a deep relationship and I began to learn and became more interested by the data. And then the other thing was a lot of the thing that I love about the PPE industry is very few people care about gloves, safety glasses, face masks, but they care about, liability. They care about,
Hmm.
being able to operate a manufacturing facility or not die or get sickness and disease. I'm not a safety guy, but I think, the industry that I was in is anti-fragile. And there's a book about
Hmm.
what industries
Yeah.
thrive. And because of that, I feel like also generosity is one of those things too. I
Hmm.
assume as a business owner that 1 + 1 = 2, right? It's like, oh,
Right.
okay, I spend some time with this idea and then maybe I'm going to see some results. Well, everything starts from an idea and then you execute, and then maybe it's a 10x, maybe it's zero,
Yeah.
but there's a force multiplier that exists in the context of generosity that is also the same process, I think, when it comes to having an idea and thinking about a solution, that you never know where the journey is going to take you. And so I think the conversation that I had selling safety products, I was often an iceberg. I think it's because I'm
Okay.
here because someone wants money. It's actually this person really has this passion surrounding caring for their employees, or they just got sued. And it's the same deal
Hmm.
of what makes someone generous. What's that why, and how do you dig
Yeah.
deeper in a solutions approach?
So, you mentioned your time as an aide with the Senate Judiciary Committee. How did your experience with that influence your understanding of, systemic issues and the role of philanthropy and generosity in addressing those?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of that just kind of came down to understanding. I think really, again, it's like it's who, not what in the context of business. So many things are interconnected. And, I think one of the things that I quickly realized is who's going in the Senate Judiciary Committee. It's someone that it's either a lobbyist, it's a former politician, or it's someone that's got equity that scaled something and found a solution to a specific problem. And that's kind of what led me on this journey of starting a business. And the thing with the backstory of how I got into philanthropy, I was a customer for about 7 years, because one of the things that I happened, and a lot of times people don't talk about this. I'm really passionate about it because I think entrepreneurship can be lonely. And one of the things
Hmm.
that I started doing is I always gave 10%. I consider myself to be a generous person. But around COVID, my business has grown 6x. I'm doing really well. And then I want to start talking to people about my success. And I started realizing it was off putting. And I realized, gosh, it was lonely and I was afraid. And then I felt embarrassed and ashamed. But I also felt entitled because I'm like, I worked so hard to get so
Hmm.
far. And now I'm finally where I want to be. But, I can't talk to anyone, or I don't know how to approach it. And also, I didn't really have, I didn't know what kind of my values were. I would just want to make some money. I didn't really have a deeper why. And so part of this whole journey for me was learning really how to give, because when I started making a bunch of money, I slowly stopped giving, and I started marriage issues,
Hmm.
started having all these different problems, and then realized I'm kind of alone. And I think, that was a big eye opener for me to realize that, I mean, it's okay to not to be okay. But then the other thing that's really powerful is there's $120 trillion that's moving right now from one generation to the next.
Yeah.
And very few people know what to do with that. How do you not destroy
Hmm.
your kids? Do you give it away to charity? Do you, give it to the government? I mean, it's like there's a lot of values that people have, but who do you talk to? And who's done that well? A lot of financial advisors are great, but are they good at scaling a business? Have they done
Hmm.
that before? Can you share that with them? And the heart knowledge. It's great to know certain things about, hey, I shouldn't eat too much or I shouldn't do this. It's another thing to live that out and understand, how does that relate to my values, my season? And so I just kind of went on this journey of realizing, like there's a lot there, and it's a longer story probably for a different day. But yeah.
Yeah. Um, we kind of like maybe getting a little bit deeper into some of that because it's interesting, right? You're talking a little bit about finding this loneliness. You're also a dad, right? So you have a family, you've got a couple kids.
Sure. Yeah.
I guess you're soon to be three, at least at the time of this recording anyway. It's like growing family. You obviously get around. I think before we started recording, you said you would just take a trip up to Toronto and back.
Sure.
You're reading a lot. You mentioned at least a couple books already here. Anti-Fragile, which is a great book. I don't know if you said Start with Why, but you've said Why enough times. I think you
Yeah.
probably have read
Yeah.
Start with Why by Simon Sinek. It's like
Yeah.
you have a lot of passions and a lot of interest. So what does that? I'm always curious about this from an entrepreneurial standpoint, because as an entrepreneur, Yemi can speak to this. Like we've talked to a lot of different people who have done a lot of different businesses in a bazillion different sectors. And I'm always curious, what does it mean for you as an individual to, I don't like to use the term balance as much, because I think that can carry a lot of weight and maybe mean different things to different people. But what does it mean to you, I guess, to be more grounded, to where you are still participating in a lot of things that interest you, that do something for
Sure.
you individually, but also fulfill your calling for what you're
Yeah.
doing to, help other people? Like, what does that look like? What does
Yeah.
that grounding look
I
like
think
in a larger
that's a
picture?
great question. And I think to make it very simple, I would say one of the things that I did with my wife was kind of figure out what's our family goal. I think I've got kind of a business
Mm,
related goal. I've got family goals. I've got others. So like a family goal is creating safe places that inspire beauty and freedom. So I think
okay.
there's a lot of different things that kind of flow out of that. I think I've never seen a business that's been healthy and successful without having, uh, without understanding either how to relational dynamics or how to create a safe place for their customers, for their suppliers. Like if there's not an opportunity for trust in a business, I don't think that business is going to survive. So, that for me has been magic, is when I think working on Capitol Hill, some people have an idea that when things happen on the committee side, it happens individually, one on one. And I think every customer that I've got was an individual conversation. There was trust built in a safe way. There's a time process, but I think my framework is creating safe places, inspire beauty and freedom. So I go, who are the people that I want to be around? And they're business owners and they're leaders, and they're trying to think differently about things. And so, but a lot of the context, like I'm a person of faith, so I own a business, I actively invest. Any things that are going to help me in that context, that also where I can simplify my time, is really where I try to look for how can I leverage my time and my relationships to add value for as many people as I possibly can. So I'm constantly thinking about what are ways that I can grow my network, what are ways that I can learn that will enhance things. But I think, I regularly have conversations. I got several mentors. I talk regularly with my wife. But I think a lot of that kind of came down to like, how do I think differently? When most people are doing this, how can I think differently? I think it's like not a lot of people are starting
Okay.
a PPE business 7 years before the pandemic. I didn't know that was going to happen. But again, it's
Sure.
like that mindset of my framework is kind of like, is creating safety for freedom. And there's a whole lot of things that are personal, professional, family oriented. But I think I try to have a systems approach of, instead of just having one relationship, I often think about the network effect as it relates to how can I find or connect with someone that's a leader that has way more understanding or expertise, and then get to know them and then kind of work a way around. So that I kind of have a systems approach when it comes to business and a lot of relationships and also faith, because I feel like that's for me how I leverage my time, my value, my relationships to see kind of impact. So
Yeah.
there's a lot there in that question. So I hope I'm
Yeah.
answering some of
No,
it.
it was kind of a loaded question, so it's fair. It's
Sure.
lots
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's great.
It sounds like you, as you've gotten more into the generosity space and everything, and you present yourself very much like a mentor. Um, what is the most common piece of advice that you give to those who want to be quote unquote generosity catalysts, or social entrepreneurs?
Sure. Well, I think a lot of it comes down to that who, not what. I think there's always, I think the opportunity comes from collaboration. And I think most businesses, most organizations, like I'm constantly learning new things on a daily basis. And I think that's really for me where I've kind of grown the most. But I would say from a kind of an advisory standpoint, I think I've just learned what doesn't work. There's a lot of things that I've learned the hard way. Like I wish I would have done EOS early on and scaled my business. It would have saved me probably 3 to 4
Yeah.
years. Same with Vistage. Now my
That's great.
business partner has way more experience than I did, so it was kind of a mentorship. But one of the challenges is it kind of became a little bit awkward where I'm the key man and he's older, and so it's like I've had to learn and evolve both with my investing, my business. But I think the thing is like what I've noticed is what are the things that give me life and lean into those because I used to have this idea of like I give money over here, but I'm not a ministry person. Well, I've always been a ministry person, and it's both. But now it's funny because I work for one of the largest Christian grant making organizations, and I'm doing charitable
Hmm.
M&A. And most people don't think about, wait, if I gift a portion of my business, I can save a ton of taxes and clarify my purpose, my
Yeah.
vision, improve my
Yeah.
marketing, and it's kind of it's unique, but a lot of it was getting down to my why, as Simon Sinek talked about, and also doing some intense work. Like very few entrepreneurs that I know have a holistic perspective on my personal, my work, and then also what's that gray area. And I think
Hmm.
each one of those are different. Like I think most entrepreneurs are very compartmentalized, and I was very compartmentalized. Like it's hard if you're in real estate and you're kicking out a tenant to say, hey, is this a good thing or a bad thing, right? Like, or your
Yeah.
bottom line increases 10x. It's like, well, that's, okay, that's awesome, but is it? Like, do I have the infrastructure to scale that effectively? Maybe
Hmm.
not. And there's a lot of good businesses that they're too successful too early. So I've had to learn. I need to get a mentor. I need to also really uncover what gives me life and passion, and lean into that, and be comfortable with maybe that can come in a different direction. And then I think the other big thing is, surrounding myself with people who are way more knowledgeable than I am, so I can constantly learn the things that I don't know that I need to ask. So, I'm curious about you guys. So also, like, what kind of prompted you to start, coffee, KS, and cash flow? What kind of was the impetus for you all to kind of start this?
I think it was. You'll have to help me, Yemi, because it's things have evolved so much. I think originally the play. Oh yeah, I do remember what it was. Okay, I knew it was back here somewhere. So our software company that Yemi is part of, and then we have another co-founder who's also a co-host on the show, um, Eric Griffin. Our software company, it was a marketing guy who had advised us. He's like, hey, I think you guys should start a podcast because you all have like cool, funny personalities or whatever, and people probably would want to hear you talk about nonsense. And so originally it was born out of kind of an additional aspect for us to be able to pull, traffic and just to have like another avenue
Sure.
out there
Mhm.
to kind of expand the brand a little bit. It has since kind of rolled off to be, and it's kind of becoming like its own thing, right? So we are just getting the chance to have a platform where the three of us can share, amongst ourselves and topics that we've handled personally or with guests like yourselves and people from all over the world
It's
on the
awesome.
challenges and the triumphs that they've had in some business capacity. So it's always like entrepreneurial focused in some way,
Sure.
shape, or form. But we're wanting to unpack a lot of these stories and insights from different people. So yeah, it kind of started out as like an additional marketing effort, and we're like, yeah, this is kind of cool. Let's maybe just create its own,
I love it.
brand more or less. So yeah, a lot of fun stuff.
It's great.
Yeah.
What's the legacy that you want to build, like both professionally and personally? Like a little, like let's dive a little bit more into that. You've talked about it, but I kind of want to get
Sure.
more into that.
Yeah, I mean, I think the legacy that I want to build is, I think really in the context of helping people think more clearly and succinctly about really God, relationships, and money, because I think that's kind of one of the reasons why I'm working with, you know, I work for the largest faith, the Christian grant making organization, but it's kind of a misnomer because what I do is I just help people give more to causes they care about from a transactional standpoint. So like that's kind of the excuse for the opportunity to be engaged in all sorts of different things. Like we're one of the largest financiers right now in Hollywood. We do all sorts of different types of projects. We're one of the most influential charities in the world no one's ever heard of. because
Wow.
we're constantly solutions based. Like we accidentally started a $1.5 trillion industry because we were just trying to move money. And there's a whole long
Yeah.
story behind it that I find fascinating. But I think it goes back to that whole idea of how do you create safe places for people to come alive and
Hmm.
who they're created to be. And but I think when most people miss it is they focus on values first as opposed to excellence first. I feel like
Okay.
when you can operate from a place of excellence as a business owner or an entrepreneur, that always creates a conversation for values and relationship and other things. Whereas if I'm just trying to meet someone, I'm just trying to talk about something, but I don't have a variety of solutions that I can offer, then it's more transactional, and that's okay. But
Yeah.
the legacy that I kind of want to leave is helping people think deeply about really money and relationships and that. And I think part of that is through gifts and investments. Part of that is educating and I think teaching people and thinking through how do I grow relationally, financially, spiritually. And then I think the other component is just also seeing relationships. I think that the most impactful things for me often are conversations or questions or relationships because they're not easily definable. Like, I meet someone once and is that a one time deal? Is that a life changing conversation I'll carry with me the rest of my life? And so I think my legacy is really I just want to dive deeper into those three things because I get life and I find that
Hmm.
most people don't have an opportunity. They don't have a friend. And then how do you live
Mm-hmm.
your life if you don't have a friend? Or how do you get the next job or the next customer or the next investment unless you're able to navigate succinctly in those three things because they're just so important. But it's hard to find excellence in all these different components. And my focus is really on the generosity and charitable piece. But I love seeing deal flow. I love investing. I love growing businesses. But I feel like I wanted to learn about charitable stuff, and I wanted to learn about why would someone gift $100 million business?
Mm.
I know
Yeah.
that's what I'm doing. That's why I'm a W-2 doing what I'm doing so I can learn. But then also the conversations, like I had a conversation, it was about a year ago with a billionaire the same day and a homeless person. And it was the same conversation because
Hmm.
it related to the heart of the matter of why is someone doing what I'm doing? Oh, the homeless person said, I just, I'll be generous, once I get a job. Well, you got the same amount of time as a billionaire. The billionaire is
Sure.
talking to marriage is struggling. Wife doesn't, wife doesn't like him. On top of that, his employees, the culture's a little toxic, and he's going to sell and he's going to give some money away and really deal with some passions that he has once he sells this business in the next 2 to 3 years.
Mm.
But what about now?
Interesting.
We don't,
Yeah.
like the reason you have money but you don't have purpose and clarity and you're miserable. On the flip side,
Yeah.
almost every generous person I know, they're joyful, they have peace. And there's a Harvard research that came out not too long ago and it talked about how you're actually the most successful people often are generous. And it's not a one for one, but it's like
Hmm.
there's something about giving and intentionality that pushes us to be more successful and be more creative. And I firmly believe that because when I'm really thinking through my why or I'm writing a big check, it's different, right? It's like one thing to give $5, another thing to like give a big dollar amount and say, this really matters to me. Well, then why am
Yeah.
I doing it? And how do I be serious and intentional about that? It's the same with investing, same with starting a business. Like, do you know what's going to cost you? It's going to always be
Hmm.
more than you think. But there's something about that process that I think is all interconnected.
So, wrapping up here, Blazer, I'd love to know if you're looking ahead, like with where you've been, how long you've been working with NCF,
Yeah.
and what you see coming down the pipeline. Is there a particular, maybe a grand vision or just an emerging area in generosity that really excites you? You mentioned that you guys are like in a lot of different sectors right now, right?
Sure.
So it
Yeah.
sounds like you're already covering a fair bit of ground. What is maybe the most intriguing or the thing that you not yet in,
I
but
think,
you guys are looking
yeah, I think
towards?
alternatives. I think alternatives are really massive. I think with new technology, there's so alternative investments. The fact that you can
Okay.
invest in baseball cards and wine and there's all these
Mm.
things 5-10 years ago that people look at you crazy. But I think the two biggest things I think are one, the intersection between charity and investments is massive. That I think there's now ways where you can. I can start a business that has some social benefit, and I could provide, and I'm a for-profit business, and I can enable a tax deduction for an investor.
Hmm.
That blows my mind. So this intersection between charitable and business is, I mean, impact investing means lots of different things to different people, but there's a whole lot of innovations happening there. But the biggest thing I think has to do with the multi-generational dynamic of wealth and business and giving, that, there's so many people that are, have resources. They may be, second, third, fourth generation. And how do I navigate that from, like a family dynamic, or how do I really think about that? And so I think the multi-generational component of wealth and business and investing is very unique. And I think there's a lot of folks on the faith perspective that we're just beginning to really understand how do you kind of meld, these conversations surrounding wealth and multi-generational giving, as well as
Hmm.
investing. And so I think alternative assets as a whole, because there's so many things that you can invest in and you can start and do that you couldn't do just a few years ago. And so that's kind of
Yeah.
one a huge component. And then the other component is just, I think, the differences between generations and investing and giving, which is massive because, there's words like, um, you know, leveling up and impact and customization and rules, all these, there's different words and ways of perspective. But I think one of the things that's mind blowing to me is very rare that we have so many generations in the workplace. And I think each generation has their own perspective on giving, investing, and relationships. And
Yeah.
that's something that I feel like is a massive trend, is how do you engage each person in a family, in a business, in an organization, to really see massive impact and be on the same page. And that's more of an art form than a science, but that's something I'm really
Hmm.
passionate about. I'm noticing a lot of changes because we're, in a very different world where you've got, four generations all working together. Um,
Yeah, for sure. That's awesome.
yeah.
Good stuff. Well, that was a
Yeah, it was.
great closing note there. Thank you so much for jumping on here with us today, Blazer. I've really enjoyed just hearing you. You're such an interesting backgrounds of experience here, and what you're doing now, I think, is very unique and very needed. And I'm excited to have learned more today, but also to be able to stay engaged and continue to follow on your journey and be
Yeah,
more
likewise.
involved on that front. So tell us, or our listeners rather, where they can best connect with you and stay in touch.
Yeah. So you can email me at bcsmith at ncfgiving.com or go to ncfgiving.com. And then, so also feel free to, text me or 1-859-433-3142. So, but our website's a great
Okay.
resource of information, in terms of how do you think about just impact investing? How do you think about giving? And then just the power of also creating a generous business. That's a whole other kind of talk. There's a whole lot of stuff that's
Hmm.
available. So yeah, but,
Well, I
thank you
think
for, yeah.
would be cool. We'll have you maybe back on the show down the road a little bit, and we can target that. I think that would be a really fun topic to get into
There's so many. There's how do you
specifically.
create a
That would be
generous business, or the other thing that blows me away
yeah.
too is also like specific things too in the context of real estate and others. Like the tax code is so immense, and not being an
Hmm.
accountant or attorney, there's just so much power that I wish I would have known when I started a business. Of like, wow, this is amazing. Like turning expenses into
Yeah.
deductions, and how do you leverage different things. So, but no, thank you so
Awesome.
much for the time. It was great connecting with
Yeah.
both you guys, Aram and Yemi. So look
Yeah.
forward to connecting
Thanks so
further.
much for jumping on. I hope you have a great rest of your week ahead, and we will catch you down the road.
Sounds
Yes.
good. Appreciate it. Hey, have a
All
good one,
right.
guys.
Thanks,
Thanks so
Thank
Blazer.
much.
you.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.